The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, December 18th, 2019. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, the third impeachment in the history of our nation is hours away. As the rules are being debated on the floor of the House, we're about to enter a period of debate on the 2 articles of impeachment, which then, presumably once passed, will be sent to the Senate. And speaking of the Senate, Mitch McConnell hints that there will be barely a trial in said Senate. Wants to keep it quiet because this is such a political advantage for the Republicans that they want to keep it quiet.
Wouldn't be fair.
Wouldn't be fair to... They didn't want to rub it in. We don't want to showboat. Meanwhile, new polling, Biden and Sanders more or less tied in Iowa. But the real story is we really have no idea about what's going on in Iowa. Meanwhile, in sentencing the former Trump deputy campaign manager, Rick Gates, federal judge subtweets Bill Barr by saying the Mueller probe very much warranted. Speaking of which, why did Giuliani associate Lev Parnas get $1 million in September from a billionaire Ukrainian with reported Russian mob ties? And is that guy paying the legal defenses of all these Trump associates? Meanwhile, New York court demands that the FBI offer a proposal to fix FISA flaws by January. Here's an idea. Have Congress pass a law. And while the hidden USMCA drug giveaway has now shown up in the omnibus spending bill, among other atrocities. The Pentagon got a raise. Progressive and Hispanic caucuses opposed to its eventual passage. Meanwhile, Andrew Yang drops a new health care proposition. And when I say drops, I mean drops. And all the information you need regarding tomorrow night's debate. All this and more, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. It is Wednesday. We are nearing the end of the week, as far as I'm concerned. It sort of feels that way on Monday. We're also nearing the end of the decade, and I have come to the conclusion that it's never going to end. It's just, we're going to just keep on going like this. It's going to be a constant state of frenzy. There is definitely, it seems to me, some type of weird tension, stress that maybe the world on some level is going through, but certainly I feel it in the world of politics. I noticed that Ronald Reagan, who has a podcast called Redirect, which you should work on that, about immigration law. I noticed he tweeted out looking for positive stories from immigration lawyers so that they could end the year on a high note. And apparently, none. Didn't get any. And that could be just indicative of nobody listens to a show. But I would find that hard to believe. It's a very good show. And I would imagine immigration lawyers, a lot of them listen to it. So I think there's just that quality in the air. But we will be with you for another couple of days live, and then we'll be presenting to you our famous Best of the Year cavalcade of shows, and best of in like the YouTubes in the second half of the show, and on and on. You'll have something to enjoy as you sit around the Yuletide log or whatever that is. I don't know what that means. The Yule log, the video of the Yule log.
Friggin' Gentiles.
Who knows what happens at these celebrations? And chances are I'll jump on if there's any news on YouTube and do some live streaming. And also the AM Quickie. We haven't quite sure exactly worked out the schedule, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be going on for most of the vacation. And you can sign up for that at amquickie.com. It's a 5-minute news rundown of the week. I don't know. Maybe we'll do some type of like a different type of it too, a looser version, so we can give some of the writers a day off or two. That's something to think about, Brendan. Speaking of which, folks, do you like rock and roll? This music is catching on, and one of the places where you can see some rock and roll tonight, actually. Is at Pete's Candy Store. This is in Williamsburg, is my understanding, which is the hip part of Brooklyn, and or formerly at one point back in the day. But there's still little corners of hipness, and at Pete's Candy Store at 10 p.m. it's a free show, and you'll be able to see my band. I don't know what the name of it is. You just wrote my band. Ways and Means. Brendan's band. Ways and Means. He didn't pick the title, but it's very apropos, isn't it?
That's awesome. Or Means, Ways, whichever one's backwards.
Ways and Means. Oh, Means and Ways. Yeah. Means and Ways. All right, fair enough.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how sick will the jams be?
They're going to be pretty sick jams, as the kids say. So check that out if you're in the area. It's Pete's Candy Store at 10 p.m., and that is tonight, and Means and Ways. You don't even know the names of his own band.
This is rock and roll, baby.
So yesterday, the House Rules Committee had a committee debate on how the rules were going to move forward in terms of the impeachment hearings today. And then they bring these ideas to the House. It gets debated. Then they vote on it. Then once they establish the rules, they actually have debate. And there'll be 50 seconds for each member of the House to say something. It is historic. And even 50 seconds sounds like, wow, that's not very much. There's 438? 538. 438. And I can't even remember now. I have no idea. But it's going to take like 9 hours. 9 hours for the debate to happen. And then they will vote on the articles of impeachment. And then Donald Trump will be impeached. How is he responding to this? Well, he wrote a letter to ostensibly to Nancy Pelosi, but really it's one to posterity. And Mark Simone, I know Mark Simone, went on to Lou Dobbs and gave us a sense of... Wait, is this Mark Simone? No, that's not Mark Simone, is it? That's Mark Simone. Okay. Well, I'll tell you a story about Mark Simone in a moment. But Mark Simone is a longtime AM talk radio host, local, was on WABC. Maybe he's moved over to RKO. I can't remember. But he and I have over the years have debated a little bit. Mark is a pretty glib guy. And He, despite the fact not having necessarily the deepest relationship to history, he wants to contextualize exactly this letter that will live in posterity. Here is Mark Simone on Lou Dobbs.
The president today, in writing that 6-page letter to Pelosi, gave her an opportunity, an off-ramp, if you will, at the conclusion of that letter. And then she responds with a comment to a reporter with others present, saying it was a ridiculous letter. That's her response. And the ignorance is institutionalized amongst the party of hate now, obviously.
Yeah, everybody should go read that letter. It is a masterpiece. It is the Gettysburg Address of smear job, false accusations. What a response. It's a historical document. Schumer saying we've got to have witnesses.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want you to think about the construction of this. It is the Gettysburg Address of smear accusations. So, in other words, it would be a smear accusation that was just done very well, or one that people are going to remember for a long time, maybe. I mean, in that respect, I don't know. But let's listen. Go back and let's listen again.
Amongst the party of hate now, obviously.
Yeah, everybody should go read that letter. It is a masterpiece. It is the Gettysburg Address of smear job, false accusations. What a response. It's a historical document. Schumer saying we've got to have witnesses is his admission that they didn't make the case in those 2 weeks with those 17 witnesses.
Yeah, there you have it. And that is the new line, incidentally, from the Republicans. The idea that Schumer said, let's have witnesses. It's a trial, and the impeachment itself is an indictment, which is obviously the bar is lower for an indictment than it would be a trial. And so if people feel that there was not enough time, the Republicans were not given enough time in the context of creating the indictment, by all means, it is only just to have witnesses in the Senate. But apparently the Republicans are not so happy. But let's get back to what Mark Simone calls the Gettysburg Address of smear job thingamajiggies, or whatever he said. We don't have the whole thing for you because it's 6 pages long. But Anthony Adamaric, who used to have a show called The President Show, did us all a huge favor and read the entire thing for folks. And here is, we'll just do, what page are we on here?
This is right about towards the beginning.
Towards the beginning, when Trump writes to express his strongest and most powerful protest against the partisan impeachment crusade.
You have cheapened the importance of the very ugly, total dog, 3 at best word, impeachment. By proceeding with your invalid impeachment, you are violating your oaths of office. You are breaking your allegiance to the Constitution, and you are declaring open war on American democracy. You dare to invoke the Founding Fathers in pursuit of this election scheme, yet your spiteful actions display unfettered contempt for America's founding, and your egregious conduct threatens to destroy that which our founders pledged their flary flags to fill. Even worse than offending the founding fathers, you're offending Americans of faith by continuing to say, oh, I pray for the president, when you know this statement is totally not true, unless it's negative, if it's meant in a negative sense, and that's a terrible thing that you're doing. But you will have to live with it. Not I! Your first claim, abuse of power. That'd be a great name for a cool Nelson DeMille airport novel. Abuse of power is a completely disingenuous, meritless, and baseless invention of your imagination. You know that I had a totally innocent conversation with the president of Ukraine. Totally innocent. I then had a second conversation that has been misquoted, mischaracterized, and fraudulently misrepresented. Fortunately, there was a transcript of the conversation taken. And you know from the transcript, which was immediately made available, totally right away, only 35 days 60 days, 90 days, 90-day fiancé. I wish I was watching that instead of reading this stupid letter, which was immediately made available. That paragraph in question was perfect. It was totally perfect. A total 10. I said to President Zelensky, I would like you to do us a favor, though. What did I mean? I wanted him to send me some Ukrainian pierogies, fried, not boiled, baby. Because our country has been through a lot, and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I said, do us a favor. Not me and our country. I said us. Not a campaign. I meant U.S. U.S. Not us like us. I was saying do U.S. a favor. But when I call the U.S., I call it us. I then mentioned the Attorney General of the United States. Every time I talk with a foreign leader, I put America's interests first. Just
okay, there's more, and frankly,
I could listen to that all day.
I was gonna say, like, this will be on a loop in my home probably for weeks. Like, this is dinner movie. This is and Matt, this is your dream come true, right? Just having this, you're just gonna lay some tracks behind it. And
no, I mean, Trump tapes would be my dream come true.
There you go.
Actually, him on the phone. But it's like this part is notable because he mentions. Then I mentioned the Attorney General, but he doesn't say. Then I said get in touch with Giuliani.
Right. I didn't mention Rudy, which would be weird for you to get.
The great thing about him is that he's completely insane, but still here enough to know when to lie.
Well, Stephen Miller wrote this letter. I mean, I think that seems to be the consensus that Stephen Miller wrote this, and
it's probably like jazz. He understands my inner voice.
He gets me.
It's more my letter to the Danbury Baptists, where Jefferson talked about the separation of church and state. This is, if you want to put it into historical context, Simone. That's it.
Folks, with the cold months now here, nothing sounds better than curling up next to a warm fire, sipping on a cup of hot chocolate, and cracking open an intricate homicide investigation. Cue Hunt a Killer. It's the subscription game that thrusts you and your friends and family into an ongoing murder mystery investigation. With every delivery, you sift through the piles of documents, evidence, audio recordings, case files, eliminating suspects until you solve the case, catch the killer. No wonder they have a 2,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Look, I don't know about Trustpilot. I know about the Cedar household. And Mile and I, it's almost the only time we communicate now.
Cedar Pilot.
I'm there half the time, and then something comes up, and we have to miss a week, and we're bummed about it. But we get a new case file. I'm not going to give any of the details away. I'm not going to talk about where we are in the case, but I will say this: it is a story about basically a reunion, and something goes awry, and we got to figure out which of the reunion goers, or maybe it's not even a reunion goer, maybe it's somebody who worked at the school. We don't not gonna. Well, honestly, it is. It's super fun, and I mean, I would imagine you could play it with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your significant other, your older kids. I wouldn't play this with Saul, but with teenagers, and she loves it. She loves it, and it's I'm not saying it's educational, but it's nice to get your kid doing something that involves analytical thinking and whatnot. But it also would make a great gift. Really great gift. Now because you listen to this program, you can go to huntakiller.com, use the promo code MAJORITY. You get 20% off your first box. And they even have gift cards so you can do it for your holiday shopping. This is a winner, folks, because you're not going to get something in a day or two and have it shipped in time. You want to run out for the crowds? Forget that. Huntakiller.com, promo code MAJORITY. They're throwing in exclusive bundles for the holiday season. So make sure you use the promo code MAJORITY. Go to huntakiller.com for 20% discount. Show your support for the show, but also do yourself a huge favor. It's fun. Huntakiller.com, promo code MAJORITY. All right, we will Well, I don't want to say that because every time I say that, we never do. That we're going to get to calls early. So Donald Trump has written this letter to Nancy Pelosi, which will, I don't know, be in the Smithsonian. I mean, honestly, like it's the third time. I mean, like right now, everything seems just ridiculous to us. At one point, maybe 70, 80 years from now, when people can look back on this and laugh a little bit, they're going to look back on this as a piece of history. It's not going to be sort of as amusing. You know, there'll be some historians like in 70, 80 years who's just like, oh, have you guys ever seen the Trump letter? And then and everybody was sitting around, ingesting whatever it is at that time that we ingest. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Everybody will have their IV hooked up, even if, maybe we won't even have bodies at that point. We'll just be orbs. But
God willing.
Talking about how funny that that letter is back in history.
Oh, that's very optimistic of you, Sam.
Who knows?
I want to see the Obama letter to Boehner like that.
Well, but here's the thing. We also know, not only is this letter come off as if it's written by a lunatic, we know that Donald Trump must be losing his mind over impeachment. And how do we know? Not just his behavior, because he's been losing his mind for a while. We know because if Donald Trump could look into the future, like he had a perspective about impeachment that I think probably describes what he's experiencing to a T. Now, I can't read his mind and know this, but I can watch video of him calling in to Fox and Friends in 2014. And this is what he had to say about impeachment.
Do you think Obama seriously wants to be impeached and go through what Bill Clinton did? He would be a mess. He would be thinking about nothing but it would be a horror show for him. It would be an absolute embarrassment. It would go down on his record permanently. But they're saying, oh, he'd love to be impeached. That would be so good. And the Republicans are all saying, oh, we'd never impeach him. We'd never impeach him because he'd like that. Well, and the Republicans, and I'm a Republican, and the Republicans...
There you go.
I love that grunt he does when he's trying to sound tough.
I'm a Republican. Do we have the clip from that we'd pulled from, I guess it was like a year ago or August or something like that, where Ducey was saying if he said Biden? Do we have that?
It'll be remembered as the greatest con job ever.
I don't want to play that, but I mean, I want to play that. But that is Donald Trump, I think, to a T, expressing what he's going through. Because he had this projection of this notion of what impeachment meant. And he might be right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, personally, I think that Donald Trump was going to go down in history maybe as the worst single or two-term president that we've had. I mean, I don't think it's possible for history to look kindly upon Donald Trump's presidency, but this is the type of document that, I mean, look, there's been 2 other impeachments. Bill Clinton, after they tried to smear, I can't even remember her name now. After they tried to smear
who?
Yeah, Lewinsky.
Oh, you mean the Clintons?
Yeah, the Clintons tried to smear her when it first came out.
Lewinsky,
Yeah, and say she's a lunatic, blah, blah, blah. Once it went to impeachment, he became very much sort of contrite. And there was no question as to whether one could impeach. The question was, should one?
I realized that I should go on the pedophile's plane after I conclude my work serving the American people. I apologize.
I've changed my ways. I would say he probably did not have another fare in the White House.
Counting the days.
And I think that's true.
Post-prezzo what?
I was on my best behavior.
Andrew Johnson was a lunatic. He could have written a letter like this, it seems to me, but he didn't. And now we have the 3rd impeachment in the history of our country, and this letter will be the central focus of when historians look back on that. They will look at this letter and say, wow, this guy was nuts.
Actually, they'll say how healthy I was.
The other concern I have is the way he's going to assuage his hurt feelings is by lashing out. Like, you can't impeach me twice. Now, you can, but I think that they probably know in the White House, like, they're not going to go back down this road again. And so, I mean, that's personally why I would like to see multiple articles of impeachment be sort of like doled out over the course of the next 6 months.
You think he's not going to do more crimes
Exactly.
if he gets out of this?
Exactly. Or even if he does get out, I mean, he's going to do more crimes, period. Here is just since we heard that fallback Wednesday clip of Donald Trump calling into Fox and Friends in 2014. Here is, and this is just from like September. Here's Steve Doocy reminding everybody what it would take to legitimize impeachment.
If the president said, you know, I'll give you the money, but you got to investigate Joe Biden, that is really off the rails wrong.
Right.
But if it's something else, you know, it would be nice to know what it is. Mark Levin's.
Yeah, there you go. Boom.
Hey, you do know what it is now, buddy.
Right.
Off the rails.
Off the rails. Not on the rails. Not behavior that the president should be following.
You're the one who's off the rails, Steve.
Now,
I'm a Republican.
Here's the thing.
I paid.
The Republicans' reaction to impeachment, it seems to me, basically falls into two basic categories. One is, this is a great chance for me to burnish my bona fides as a lunatic to my constituents and either both ensure that I'm going to get reelected and no one's ever going to challenge me again in this seat, or maybe give me a future in broader Republican politics to the extent that there will be one. And here is a clip from Doug Collins in the House Rules hearing. This is the Rules Committee was setting the rules for impeachment ahead of the, and they're having a debate on the rules of impeachment. This committee is chaired by Jim McGovern, Worcester's finest. Love it. And listen to Doug Collins try and respond to a simple question as to, do you think that what Trump did, because nobody's disputing the actual facts, right? Nobody's saying, like, he never called Zelensky. He never said investigate Biden or Burisma or any of these things. And he never said, like, he never held back the money. Nobody's saying that. So the question is, like, do you think it's appropriate? Like, give me a sense of, like, where on, like, a scale of 1 to 10, how appropriate is this call? And watch Doug Collins try and answer this question.
And to explain what happened.
And Mr. Collins, I'll ask you and Mr. Eskin the same question. I mean, was the president's call with President Zelensky perfect, as the president has said? And was it appropriate for him to ask another country to investigate an American citizen?
I think there was nothing, I've said this before, there's nothing wrong with the call. And then when you look at it, and again, the problem we're having right now is exactly the last 15 minutes of this. Great oratory on a lot of things that mean nothing to this actual impeachment. I mean, we get down to the bottom line here, and I'm just leave it at that. Let him answer that question. I'll get back to it later, because everything that's been thrown out here is exactly what the problem we've had in the discussion. And this idea of throwing law and fact, we've disproven the facts. We've talked about the law and broken. They didn't put it in the Constitution. So I can yell on both of them. I can talk about both of them. The problem we have here is this is the very problem we have. And I'll just address one thing before I let it back. Or if you want me to switch right now, I will.
No, I mean, that's
okay.
fine.
I'll give it to him.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'm looking at, the president and the
Yeah, there
if you're watching on YouTube, Doug Collins did that to the video.
Yeah, you can't really see what he's saying. But he couldn't answer, and then finally just landed on pass. Wish we could see that again, because the look on his face, he looks like he's a deer in the headlights there. But Doug Collins trying to answer the simple question, like, how would you assess what he did? And they'll talk about process, and they'll talk about lack of testimony from Adam Schiff. We watched all the hearings. Here is Kevin McCarthy. He is the minority leader in the House, and he is inventing a notion of expungement, which is the concept that is, well, the easy way to describe what expungement is that it's made up.
Congressman, 20 years from now, how will history remember what's about to happen?
Well, I think they'll just brush this aside. Maybe a future Congress would even expunge this vote because it is the thinnest, fastest, weakest impeachment in American history. And the sad part, you have
Pause
to go
it.
back
Again,
and look.
I want to remind you, it's the third impeachment in American history. When you start talking about the history of impeachment, the thinnest, fastest impeachment in American history, there's only been two others.
Many people said they would expunge it.
Impeachment in American history. And the sad part, you have to go back and look at this. The Speaker admits for the last 2.5 years she's been trying to impeach this president. Yesterday, we just had a FISA judge go after the FBI for what they went in and spied on this president while he was running for office. And remember where this impeachment comes from. The Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, who actually defended the FISA court, defended what they had done the FBI, had lied about having proof, had lied about meeting the whistleblower. So those Democrats who vote for it today, what will we learn about 6 months from now? Probably from a year from now, they'll have a very short career here in Congress because they would not uphold the rule of law.
All right, first off, the amount of lies in there is really, really stunning. I mean, aside from like the things like Adam Schiff, his name is Schiff, but
Adam Shifty.
The FBI, the judge was admonishing the FBI about its FISA application for someone who was no longer working for the campaign, was months off of the campaign. Someone who was investigated starting in 2013. The IG report found that the investigation was warranted. A judge yesterday in sentencing Rick Gates found that the investigation was warranted. Nancy Pelosi has not been wanting to impeach Donald Trump. It is one of the most ridiculous things about Nancy Pelosi that she has been so adamant about not impeaching Donald Trump. And the idea that 20 years from now, that the Congress would say, like, it's time to say we're sorry to Donald Trump, I find to be very hard to believe. Although, I mean, it's possible, I guess, if it's an all-Republican Congress. I find that hard to believe, too, but we shall see.
Time to expunge it.
Expunge.
I really like that weird growl thing. I've never caught that before.
It's a little
stuck on
Broadway.
that. It is very Broadway. I'm a Republican.
Well, if
My
you
dad
watch somebody, he
gave me
does
money.
that when he gets into some of his bigger moments in the rallies. He gets there. Here is Debbie Lesko. She is a Republican from Arizona. I think she's also on the Intel Committee or the Judicial Committee. I can't remember. And apparently, she has not only no sense of irony, but no sense of shame. Remember Arizona. Here she is defending Donald Trump, slamming impeachment. And look at what the Democrats are doing in the context of impeachment.
This is the most partisan impeachment in the history of the United States. Not one Republican voted for it in Judiciary Committee, not one Republican voted for it in Rules, and not one Republican, I don't think, is going to vote for it here today. Madam Speaker, this is a sad day. I believe the Democrats are tearing this country apart. They're tearing families apart.
They're tearing families apart. This is
it's like that guy we heard from the other day who was so sad his daughter was mad at him.
Well, I mean, there's a special irony to the idea of accusing Democrats of tearing families apart when you represent a district and a border state, when you probably have a very high level of consciousness that it was actually policy not only to tear families apart, but to basically kidnap the children, put them in other homes forever so they would never see their parents again. Still hundreds of children, if not thousands, still missing.
I think the official number we had, I forget the context, but we were talking about this on Tuesday. I mean, yesterday on the fun half, at least over 1,000.
Yeah.
Well, this is one thing that the far right does. They appropriate language from where it belongs and the people that it belongs to, usually the left, and use it for their own twisted purposes.
The only thing that she points out here, based upon what you say and what she pointed out there, is exactly why Nancy Pelosi should have allowed for impeachment on such issues like tearing families apart. Anything you leave on the table, they will take. Not to mention just sort of the basic humanity and ethics of the whole thing. And it's also, you know, a missed opportunity, again, to use these things as markers for future policy. And that's, you know, to the extent that people have a problem with this impeachment based upon, like, I don't agree with U.S. policy towards Ukraine, or it required, you know, a lot of sort of saccharine jingoism in the course of the impeachment. It's exactly the reason why there should have been more sort of vociferous support for impeachment on other issues. Because again, like, this is a good opportunity. When it comes out that they abuse FISA for Carter Page, this is a great opportunity for people who have been advocating for reform of FISA to jump on it. And when they go after the whistleblower, you never hear anything about the woman who blew the whistle on the national security clearances for Jared Kushner. She was just suspended. You use this as an opportunity to build up those policies. You leverage the sort of broad disdain and establishment disdain of Donald Trump to pursue your policy agenda. But it's a weird time, folks. It's a really disturbing time. Hey, since we're going back, let's look back on two key figures in impeachment as it moves from the House to the Senate. One was, I believe, he was definitely a congressman at the time, and I believe he was one of the managers, the House managers. There's certain members of the House who go over to the Senate, and I don't know if 100% what their role is, but they have an opportunity to sort of like speak on and present the cases. But here is Lindsey Graham in 1999 in the House of Representatives talking about the need for impeachment in terms of what it does. It's not just about getting him out of the office. It's not about physically removing him. It is about disinfecting the office.
So the point I'm trying to make is you don't even have to be convicted of a crime to lose your job in this constitutional republic. If this body determines that your conduct as a public official is clearly out of bounds in your role, because impeachment is not about punishment. Impeachment is about cleansing the office. Impeachment is about restoring honor and integrity to the office.
How was that, John?
I'm pretty sure that was the job of the night porter, just going in with a spray bottle.
Yes, in that instance. But you have Lindsey Graham at that point had a different idea of what impeachment was all about. And here's someone else who has a different impeachment. You'll note that Susan Collins, who is so desperate in any way to justify the vote that she's going to have to take for impeachment, right? Like, she is on a mission to find an offense committed by the Democrats that can justify her vote for impeachment. Because otherwise, and she's still going to have this problem, like, how does she distance herself from the president and justify her vote? And it turned out to be that Chuck Schumer wanted witnesses in the Senate trial. That was the thing that she has decided to hang her hat on, as it were, and claim that the Democrats are sort of out of control. This is not appropriate. You don't go publicly and say you want witnesses at an impeachment trial. You just don't do it. Unless the year is 1999 and you're talking about Bill Clinton and you're Susan Collins from Maine.
I am willing to travel the road wherever it leads, whether it's to the conviction or the acquittal of the president. But in order to do that, I need more evidence. I need witnesses and further evidence to guide me to the right destination, to get to the truth. Yesterday, the president's attorney, David Kendall, referred to the mountain of evidence in this case. And there is indeed a mountain of evidence. But there is also a record that is replete with conflicting statements, with significant gaps, and with unanswered questions. We need to answer those questions in order to fulfill our duty to do impartial justice.
There she is. I can't believe she said that publicly, because apparently that's a really bad thing to do.
Oh, whatever.
My biggest fear about the impeachment going forward is that the impeachments, because it is because they did not pursue other articles, maybe they will, but it doesn't appear that they're going to. It goes to the Senate. All those Republicans like Susan Collins, they vote to protect the president. And then they just hope they're safe from their primary challenges. And remember, like, we are at peak protection of the president right now. Till we get past those primary challenge deadlines, we're at peak protect the president if you're a Republican. After March 15th, I mean, it's very different deadlines in different states, but somewhere around, March 20th, most of those states, the deadline is passed. You're going to see a little bit more distance. And Susan Collins, what she's doing now is praying. There's others who are doing this. Cory Gardner, Joni Ernst, the senator from Arizona whose name I can never remember. Martha McSally.
Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene.
That may help me. Martha McSally. Tom Tillis, the woman who was just appointed Georgia's senator. They are praying that worse stuff comes out about Trump after the impeachment. So maybe there's financial records, whatever it is, and they can say, I disagree with the president on this. I think what the president is doing is wrong. So they can get the impeachment vote. They can get credit for protecting him on impeachment, but they can get away with saying some things, because I may have voted differently if I had known about this. If the House had sent us, done investigations about this, I may have voted differently. That's the way that she did. That's the way that they will do this.
The purple district ones, anyway.
Well, that's what I was just talking about. All those, the Senate.
The rest of them, they're just going to show.
No, of course.
They're
But that's what I'm
competing to-
talking about specifically. Cory Gardner, Susan Collins, Joni Ernst, Tom Tillis, Georgia, Arizona. There may be one or two other places, but those are the places where they're very worried about having to vote to protect Donald Trump and basically have that become a burning tire around their necks when they're up for when they're running for re-election. Let's take a quick phone call, shall we? Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello? Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, this is Kowalski.
Kowalski in Nebraska. What's happening, Kowalski?
Waiting in line at an ethanol plant.
Nice. Of course. Who isn't?
Most people.
Right.
Hey, I was just going to call in one last time this year. Tell you guys it's been quite the journey this year, finding you. But anyways, I wanted to give a couple recommendations for some YouTube channels since I'm sure your viewers are going to be lacking for content
for
the next couple of weeks. 3 channels, 2 of them that I consider to be pretty decent. One's called Bad Empanada. I think your viewers would really like him. Touches on a lot of social issues and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, we had him on the Antifada recently.
Another one. Oh, good. Nice. Another one is Renegade Cut. I'm sure you guys have heard of him. Does mostly movie reviews and stuff. Probably up your guys' political alley as well. Pretty entertaining. But the one that I would recommend the most is Caspian Report. I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of him, but he does some pretty great work. I highly recommend this channel.
Caspian Report?
He's I believe he's from Azerbaijan. He speaks English very well, does a lot of just information on geopolitics. I'm pretty sure he was in the equivalent of their country's version of the State Department.
Huh.
He also has like an hour-long series on the Golden Age of Islam, which I think to a Western audience is pretty palatable, and it kind of puts a lot of things in context, especially about like the preservation of Greek philosophy through the Arab world and how they kind of expanded on a lot of the philosophical, like just discussions of it. Pretty fascinating in my opinion, so I think your viewers would absolutely love it. So,
Kowalski, let me ask you this: what is? Do you have any sense of how impeachment's being received in your parts?
Party lines. I think for the most part, people on the left feel comfortable enough to actually voice their opinion on it, which I didn't think was going to be a thing. It had seemed like the narrative had pretty much just backed a lot of left-leaning people into a corner or even centrist. But like if you go onto local like news sites on like Facebook and other social media platforms, it's still definitely the Trump crowd is winning, but there is decent amount of pushback. I would be really surprised if this does not energize a lot in Omaha when it comes to the Senate race, because right now I know our Senator Sass is up for re-election, and he has been getting pretty hounded by the Republican farmer base, and the Democrats don't really like him. So I don't know. It could be a pretty interesting year for a lot of people.
All right, so just I want to tease that out a little bit with Sass, like, because he's going to end up having a vote for, I would imagine against impeachment, but that's going to cost him. Is that what you're saying?
It might cost him some centrists and in Omaha. I would say definitely probably not going to, unless his primary challenger can use it to his advantage. I don't think he's actually going to lose to a Democrat. But right now, I know he's getting a challenger from the right, which he's not exactly a centrist, but he's not as far gone, in my opinion, as a lot of people might think. So it could get worse. So I have no doubt he's going to vote for Trump, but it'll just depend.
Interesting. All right. Well, Kowalski, you have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you in the new year.
All right. You guys have a good one, and Merry Christmas from real America.
Damn it. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you from Fake America.
Local news comment sections are an important location for political struggle out there.
This just
Minion
breaking.
Death Cult has real up on that.
A judge threw out state charges against Paul Manafort today. This was the Manhattan District Attorney was bringing charges against Manafort involving mortgage fraud and more than a dozen other state felonies. The Justice Maxwell Wiley of the state Supreme Court in Manhattan dismissed the indictment, saying the charges violated the legal principle of double jeopardy, which holds that a defendant may not be tried twice for the same conduct. So Manafort is in prison in federal prison. The idea was that they wanted to bring other charges against him in state prison and state law so that Donald Trump could not pardon him. It was a 16-count indictment, and it grew out of an investigation from 2017 when Manhattan prosecutors began examining loans that Mr. Manafort received from two banks. Manafort's lawyers had argued that state charges should be dismissed because they involved some of the same allegations that had been made in the federal cases, and that there was the defense lawyer said that the overlap was extensive, and that's double jeopardy means you cannot be tried twice, both in federal and state court on the same crimes, essentially. To me, that sounds like Cy Vance screwed up and did some pretty bad lawyering. Let's take one more phone call before we go into the fun half. Calling from a 314 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's up? It's Jason.
Jason, where are you calling from?
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon. What's on your mind, Jason?
I just want to draw your attention to a documentary I recently saw that might be of interest to some of our libertarian friends listening.
Okay.
It's about a group of people that they kind of manage their own natural resources. They've got access to gasoline and water. Can't remember the title of it. It's got Charlize Theron in it, Tom Hardy. They got lots of vehicles. They customize their cars really well.
It's good. It's good. I don't know if that's a documentary, but appreciate the call. Is that the updated?
Yeah, no. Here it is. I got it. It's Mad Max Fury Road.
Right. Okay.
We understood the joke and where it was going.
Thank you.
That was why we politely acknowledged it
and decided
moved forward
to move on.
B+ for effort. A solid gentleman B for content.
We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support this program. You keep it alive. You're the reason why we can still do this. Jointhemajorityreport.com. You'll get the show, the free show, free of ads, and you'll get extra content virtually every single day. I don't know, there may be a day or two here or there, but that's about it. And as we go in to, we are now in our 10th year. This is our 10th year. It's going to be our 10-year anniversary. Yeah, you call this the 10th year. So this is our 10th year. 10-year anniversary is going to fall on the election day, 2020. That was not.
Wow.
What are the chances of that?
Bernie better win.
No kidding. I think he's surging. We're going to talk about the race in the fun half. But you can support the show by going to jointhemajorityreport.com and help us with our trying to grow and maybe launch new shows and all sorts of stuff like that. So jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. The AM Quickie, it's live. Check it out. I mean, it's not literally live. It is alive. amquickie.com. Also, reminder, Hunt a Killer is the subscription game that thrusts you and your friends and family into an ongoing murder mystery investigation. With every delivery, you sift through piles of documents, you got evidence, you got audio recordings, you got case files, you eliminate suspects. In my instance, I have a bulletin board, and I got the red string. I did the whole deal. Make it fun for Mile and I.
Believe that.
Yeah, why not? Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com, use the promo code MAJORITY. You get 20% off your first box. And they have gift cards, so you can use it for your holiday shopping. Not to mention, they're throwing in exclusive bundles for the holiday season. So make sure you use the promo code MAJORITY at huntakiller.com for a 20% discount to show your support for the show. Huntakiller.com, promo code MAJORITY. Today is Wednesday. Last night was Tuesday.
Great show on TMBS. As always, Joshua Kahn Russell, great guest. Check out everything, including show schedule and live performance schedule. Next show, February 7th at the Bell House. Get your tickets at tmbs.fm. Also, the blurb page on my upcoming book for Zero Books. And next week, slight schedule change because we're going off. We're going to be doing a Monday show instead of a Tuesday show. And Richard Wolff is going to be in studio helping us wrap up the year.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, Andy and Sean are joined by writer, translator, and historian of the revolutionary left, Mitch Abador, to talk about the life, legacy, and relevance of the Bolsheviks' pet anarchist, Victor Serge. An illegalist anarchist turned anarcho-syndicalist turned Bolshevik turned left oppositionist before being completely black-pilled, Serge is a rare example of a revolutionary who jumped from tendency to tendency while still maintaining his principles. Abador and Richard Greenman recently translated Serge's 1936 to 1947 notebooks, written mostly while living in exile in Mexico and watching the dream of proletarian revolution unravel. Check it out, folks. Patreon.com/theantifada. Oh, also we have merch for all your holiday gifting needs.
Matt?
Literary hangover coming up this Saturday is The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, the second most published work in English behind the Bible. And it's ostensibly an allegory about how to become a Christian and get into the celestial city or heaven. But it really, I think you can read it as a early fiction that goes on sort of ideology versus politics at a time of revolution in England, and how that gets synthesized into ideas.
It's not Harry Potter?
No, Harry Potter's way behind.
But that was number 2.
Pilgrim's Progress, I call it. It's sort of like what Lord of the Rings was for culture for like 200 years, following 1670s.
Remember when Donald Trump was at a rally and he was just like, "Art of the Deal, second best book ever," and he's just like, "Does everybody know what the first best book is?" And somebody's like, "Bible," and he's like, "That's right, the Bible.
The Bible's number 1.
2 Corinthians."
See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
In fact, Sam will be with you right now. And you are calling from a 469 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 469.
Hey, this is me.
Yes, it is.
Hey, Sam. This is Z from India.
Z from India?
Yeah. I mean, we are having protests going on a new citizenship bill that was brought by the right-wing government.
Yep.
I see you haven't touched that on the show, so I just wanted to call in and, just let the people know that, yes, we are indeed doing our best to try and stop them.
I mean, give me a sense of how nervous are you? Are folks who? I mean, I don't pretend to have a notion of what the major dividing lines are. But when you see what the Modi government is doing, and there's been obviously an extended project that is culminating, or I should say, the latest step of which is this citizenship law. That is amendment that is aimed at basically making Muslims non-citizens, I guess. I don't know how else to phrase that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So it's a bit complicated. The Citizenship Amendment Act doesn't do that. So the actual problem is when you combine that with another bill that they have proposed called the National Registry of Citizens. So what this bill does is it gives citizenship to Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Parsis, and Buddhists from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan who have been here before 2014. So these are minority groups persecuted in these countries, but it is sort of a political vote bank play that goes into the whole electoral politics of the regions close by. But the thing is, they get sort of an fast-track path to citizenship. They'll have to have been here for 5 years, while the Muslims and the other excluded groups would have to be here for 11 years. So the thing you got to understand about India is we don't have a refugee category. We are not signatories to the refugee declaration of the UN. So we have legal immigrants and we have illegal immigrants. That's it. So that is the nature of this bill. The thing they have excluded is, for example, Sri Lankan Tamils, when there was the war going on between the LTTE and Sri Lankan government, a lot of Sri Lankan Tamils fled the country and they took refuge in India. They still don't. They were excluded from this bill. Other persecuted Muslim sects as well, Ahmadiyas and Baluchs, for example, they were excluded from the bill. Atheists, for example, are persecuted in Pakistan and Bangladesh. There is no mention of them. So this is a lot problematic, but this is absolutely just a vote bank play. The bigger problem comes in with the National Registry of Citizens, NRC, that the government has proposed and already implemented in one of our states, Assam. So what that does is, they sort of set a cutoff date. And if you were born after that, you'll have to show that both your parents were Indian citizens. And if your parents were kind of born before that, like you'll have to show three generations. Like you were born to these parents, they were Indian citizens, and they were born to your grandparents as well. They should have been Indian citizens. So the problem is, in a country like India, we don't have clear documents.
Right.
And there is a clip that you can check around saying where our home minister pretty much says, oh, if you are like Hindu, Christian, or like anybody except Muslim, they'll just give you citizenship even if you don't have documents. He just comes outright and says it. There is a clip that you can probably find online. It should be in an interview.
So basically, I mean, the long and short of it is, it sounds like they are creating laws based upon facts on the ground that will end up eliminating the potential and the citizenship rights of millions of people. And this is almost, in many respects, it's retroactive as well. And it seems to me a precursor to ethnic cleansing, right? Because the way that you go about this is you create these sort of Rube Goldberg laws that will ensnare a specific group of people based upon sort of the realities of the way that the country's bureaucracy works and the way that it's worked in the past. And then all of a sudden, overnight, this huge swath of people basically become illegal. And then, well, we got all these illegal people. We should get rid of them. And that seems to be sort of like where this is headed.
Yep. And the government has made no efforts to, ensure that all the current citizens have all the documents that they need before even trying to implement the NRC, which means, a lot of poor people and people who cannot prove their citizenship will be left out. Which will disproportionately affect the poorest of the poor of the country.
Well, that sounds like
who are mostly persecuted minorities.
That sounds more like a feature rather than a bug. I mean, the idea is that we're going to have the opportunity as a fascist government to not only eliminate, to ethnically cleanse, but we're also going to have a huge swath of the population that we're going to be able to say, you better be docile, or you better accept, or we have the legal authority now to boot you out.
How would you connect? I mean, because then there's also what's happening in Kashmir can't be separated from this, and then could you touch briefly on the ruling with the Ayodhya Mosque?
Okay, so that is again sort of a divisive topic, and I'm not like a political commentator on this, so I don't know much about it other than what I read. But essentially, the mosque in Ayodhya was demolished, which was sort of their play before this. They are trying to build, like what they claim was that, this is the place where the god Ram was born. So, Muslim, there was a Ram temple before which was demolished by Muslims, and then they built the mosque. So the mosque was demolished in the Babri Masjid riots in the 90s. So that was a huge issue, and it was survival. So what the court basically ruled was, they gave the land to the Ram Temple Trust, essentially, letting them build, enabling them to build a temple in the sanctum, like in the place where the mosque was. So that is what is happening. They have already started pushing for that as well.
Hey, geez.
Again, the Home Minister Amit Shah has announced that the Ram Temple will be built on the site within 4 months.
I know we gotta go, but I just want to say, I mean, just symbolically, this mosque was torn down by a mob in the 90s. So it's a convergence it's a convergence of the formalization of kind of like almost paramilitary politics with the Supreme Court and the current Indian government. That's one of the reasons it's so important in terms of what has facilitated this rise of BJP Hindu fascism right now.
Yeah, like they came into power sort of as the reformist thing, like you can clearly draw parallels to Trump, where he came and asked, drain the swamp. So the Congress government before were, involved in a lot of corruption. So they came to power as the reformist party, and that is how they got elected in the first term. And they tried some things. We don't have a good, strong opposition leader. So in the election in 2019, they won like a supermajority. So they have the power to pretty much do whatever they want. And I know you have to go. I'll leave you with this. So, for example, if an Indian citizen is unable to prove his citizenship, they can't be deported anywhere. So what do you think they are going to do? They are building detention centers. And yes, they are actually being built.
Wow. I would love to find out who's making all that money, too. Appreciate the call. Thanks again.
Thank you, Sam.
Hang in there. Thank you for the update. Calling from a 248 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 248.
Hi, is this me?
Yes, it is.
Oh, sweet. Thank you for taking my call. How's everybody doing today?
Great. What's on your mind?
Great. Well, this is AJ. I'm from Michigan, Metro Detroit area. Not long time listener, like 2 years now.
Oh, all right.
I just got a question about Medicare for all.
Yeah.
If you got time for it. So
sure.
I have an uncle of mine who's very centrist, Joe Biden supporter. Pretty gross.
Yeah.
And every time we kind of get into this talk about, Medicare for all, free college, anything like that, he goes, well, you're taxing my retirement. And he makes the case that taxing Wall Street, you're taxing institutional investors. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard that argument. I don't even really know how to respond to it. I'm a college kid. I don't have any investments.
So he's saying you're taxing his pension?
I don't know pension. I don't really know.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what he's talking about, but I think what he's saying is that he has probably, through work, a 401k, or maybe he has an IRA, and it's in the stock market. But as far as I know, that money, to the extent that Wall Street's being taxed on like a financial transactions tax, which I think is, at least part of Bernie's plan. I don't know if Warren has adopted that same tax. That is really just going to impact high volume traders, and if his money is in a pension that is doing high volume trading, then he's getting ripped off. So he should,
right.
It more than likely is not. I mean, if the guy has any savvy, you basically just, the idea with the pension is you maybe shift some of the, the sectors it's invested in, but broadly speaking, you're not day trading. You're not trading like, with these algorithmic machines that are doing these trades automatically. So you're not subject to like a transaction tax. In terms of a wealth tax, I mean, unless your uncle has over $50 million, he's going to be okay in terms of the wealth tax. And I would argue, even if he did have over $50 million and was subject to the wealth tax, he's going to be okay with the wealth tax. I just don't know what he's talking about. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the government already expends more than almost any other government. Just our government does. Never mind what people pay in terms of private insurance. It's going to free up a lot of money. It's going to give him, if he's working now, it's going to give him more power with his employer to seek higher wages, because it's going to give him, he's going to be untethered from his employer in terms of health insurance. And it necessarily will create, I don't think it's going to create a huge amount, because they're still going to have to pay in taxes. A lot of the taxes are going to be paid by the employers anyways. It's just going to be a replacement for what they're paying now.
Well, I mean, I guess to add more context to this is that I don't want to out too much. He's part of the postal carriers union. So, I mean, every time we have this conversation, it's literally like, well, all of us are going to lose our retirements so that you and your kids can have health care or something like that.
I don't understand
I hate to be like, okay, boomer, but you know what I mean?
No.
I mean, at that point, I don't know what else to say.
I don't understand that. I mean, I don't understand that. And particularly coming from, maybe the postal union, the only concern is that his health insurance, that he may already get good health insurance from his union. And, but I don't understand. I'm trying to figure out like what his framing is. I know the post office has a very weird thing where they are obligated to pre-fund. This is a move by the Republicans in 2006, I think it was, 2005. They forced the post office to pre-fund its healthcare and pension obligations going 75 years out, which of course is absurd. Nobody does that. No government agency does that. No company does that. And it began to basically cause them to have operating deficits over the past 10 years. Were it not for that obligation, which they had no control over, and Congress doesn't let them raise rates on stamps either. I mean, this is an attempt to force the post office to privatize. But I don't know how that would be implicated by this either. I don't think that's the case. In fact, I would tell you this, that any administration that was going to push for, never mind actually achieve, single-payer healthcare is also looking to increase Social Security. So I don't know how.
You're making a valiant effort to figure this out, but not all Biden supporters are what we would call high information voters.
Yeah, I guess to add just not even really context. I mean, I'm going back and forth with the same person about Cenk Uygur and the smears against him and him being a Russian asset. So take that at what that is. You know what I mean?
Wow. Well, is this your uncle?
Yeah.
Wait, but you're not in California, though, are you?
I'm not. I'm in Michigan. He's in California. I believe he's in the 25th. But being that he's in the union and all that, I mean, he has a little bit of sway with a lot of people around there. So,
well, this is what I would encourage him to do. You should tell him. You should tell him, call into the show, bring it up with me, and also tell him that there is no greater supporter of the post office in the media than myself.
That is very true.
So
he'll set him straight, boomer to boomer.
That's right. Well, I'm not exactly.
But anyways,
I'm Gen
I have to
X.
let you guys go.
All right, thanks.
I really appreciate all of you. You guys have helped me really expand my political horizons. So that's really cool. And I've been able to, put that into like the college that I go to here and like people I go in and have. Well,
AJ, listen, Michigan's a very, very important state. And college students are going to be
more useful there.
There's a lot you can do in your college to make an actual difference in the trajectory of the country and, frankly, arguably, the planet. So don't mean to put too much on you, but it's on you.
Here at my local college, so because of Jamie and her and all that, and so I'll let you guys go, but appreciate it. And Michael, I actually hope to see you at the live show. I'm trying to get some plane tickets to get down there. So
sweet.
Everybody have a great holiday and all that. And I'll let you guys go.
Thanks, Colin. Bye, AJ.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be great if we had a boomer to boomer network where I could like send out my mom to talk to all the other boomers about why Bernie's the best?
But I'm not a boomer.
I think it's funny to say.
We have to think of something like the boomer ceiling. Because that's what's really capping all this stuff.
Where is that Pete post office thing? I wanted to talk about how he was going to go after the post office. He's calling for the privatization of the post office, isn't he?
Wait, wasn't it something he did at McKinsey?
Yeah, McKinsey. He was the one. Oh, yeah, now I remember. So he went in. Now, this is the backstory on the post office. The post office, up until 2006, was completely self-sufficient. It did not require any taxpayer monies whatsoever to function. It paid for itself through stamps. Now, There have been many attempts to expand what the post office does. The biggest one that people have talked about is to return to the days, and this happened back, I can't remember exactly when, it was about 100 years ago now. The post office used to do some small-time banking stuff. Not like big, loans or anything like that, but they would do small transactional banking. What does this allow people to do? Well, it allows them to go and take their check from work, and instead of going to a check cashing place and paying huge fees, it allows people to have an address and establish some type of banking services. It would allow people to escape all sorts of huge service fees. You could split the fees in half right at the beginning, and then all of a sudden the post office would be doing great. You've already got people there. Add a couple. They're already doing some fairly technical work in terms of transmitting materials all around the country. So there's all sorts of good reasons for this. Well, it turns out that Pete Buttigieg was part of the team that not only said to the post office, don't pursue banking like that. This is back in 2007. Remember, this is after they have now been subjected to an incredibly onerous obligation. Republicans said to the post office, because what's the Republican agenda? We want to privatize the post office. We want to let our donors at FedEx or UPS get a hold of all the best routes. We want to privatize this thing. And so what they did is they said, you must pre-fund your health insurance 75 years into the future. You must have an account to pay for that for 75 years in the future. Now, that's absurd. No business, no government agency does that. To pre-fund retirement benefits. This 2006 law basically now is responsible for the $150 billion debt that the post office had. If you were to get rid of that pre-funding requirement, they'd be basically, again, operating at a wash. But Congress doesn't allow them to raise the rates on stamps. They don't have the ability to do this. And apparently, in working for McKinsey, Pete, this is their the Buttigieg statement. Buttigieg apparently worked on a report drawing on suggestions from McKinsey and two other consulting groups. It was critical of the revenue-raising ideas that were supported by union workers, like basically providing some financial services through the post office, saying that they would be limited by so-called high operating costs and relatively light customer traffic of post offices compared with commercial retailers. I don't even know what that means. But, and apparently gave a... They implemented a number of the recommendations from this report, which involved cutting workers and just cutting stuff, essentially. The Postal Service, in response to this report, closed 141 processing plants in 2012 and 2013. And a 2018 audit from the Postal Service's regulatory body found the decision only reaped 5% of the savings that the consultants projected it would. In other words, it was 95% short of its goal. McKinsey's proposals also included cut costs by established public-private partnerships, replaced unionized Postal Service workers with staff at retail stores like Staples. Now, fortunately, under the Obama administration National Labor Relations Board, it ruled it in violation of the collective bargaining agreement between the Postal Union and the USPS. Mark Dimenstein, the president of the American Postal Workers Union, said any objective observer would have to say the McKinsey report had a real and negative impact. Look, the bottom line is that
you don't mess with the Postal Service.
Well, but there's a broader bottom line, but that's true too. It's one thing to go into McKinsey. You know, you get out of college, you get a job offer there. Maybe for 6 months later, you realize, like, this is not the place for me. But if you are found to fit in with that culture, there are certain ideological predispositions that you have to have. And one of them is the way to achieve profitability, the way that just the response to everything. Like with the Republicans, it's cut taxes. With these people, it is cut workers benefits, cut workers, cut union workers. Close services. Rather than to see projects and be ambitious and about expanding the services to the public good, they look at everything as if it's a business, and government is not a business. Government is not a business. Government does not have to provide profits. And that, whatever that profit margin is, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 50%, that is what undercuts the services you get no matter where it is. Whether it's waiting for buses to get people out of New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, but you've privatized it and you've subcontracted it out. Everybody's holding the buses back because if they're wrong and they send them and they're not needed, they're going to lose money. And with the post office, the bottom line is, look, if you're not worried about your other clients, if you don't have the predisposition, and not even clients that you necessarily have, but just like business, if you're worried that by adding financial services to the postal office, you're going to cut into other businesses, and if you cut into other business, somehow that's going to impact your business. If that is your predisposition, if you are worried about the private health insurance industry, and you're willing to trade off the ability of everyone in the country to get health insurance and to get more comprehensive health coverage and ultimately more comprehensive health care, and to do so in a way that doesn't tax, and I mean tax in terms of like mentally, people. If you don't want to do that because you're afraid of private insurance going away, that's the predisposition you have. And your value system is just, it's specific. Other people can decide if that's the value system they want. But the idea of like, there's no inherent good in saving private health insurance. And that's the problem with Pete Buttigieg. I mean, that and the fact that he can turn on a dime, apparently, what's relevant to him. I mean, that is...
I'd be surprised to see him pivot back at this point.
I think that's unlikely. But that was a pretty hard pivot. And I don't even know if I would call it a pivot, because a pivot, you actually got to keep one foot on the floor. Right?
It's more of a...
It's a full-on travel. It's like a hop, a jump, and a skip is what it is. He took.
The TSA has several postal banking initiatives going on, by the way, including one right here in New York City, if anyone wants to get involved.
We were close at one point. Of course, under the Obama administration, they didn't do it. There was a big recommendations thing that happened, I think, about 5 years ago.
They came very close to passing it in California.
Real shame.
During the last midterm election.
Through line to Buttigieg's housing and gentrification policies.
I mean, I think it's indicative of everything, probably. I mean,
well, very
more or less.
Specifically when he said, there's an old interview of him talking about viewing his job like, I'm going to paraphrase, but something like South Bend is an incubator. It's a startup.
Well, no, it's full neoliberalism. He thinks about everything in the language of the market.
I will tell you this. The other problem with Pete Buttigieg, as I found out from an interview I did yesterday for Ring of Fire Radio, it will play this weekend, with John Larson, who is a reporter with TYT.
He's the Buttigieg reporter.
It's
the Buttigieg reporter.
It's stunning. But Larson outlined to me there are three major potential sort of like ticking time bombs when it comes to Buttigieg. Largely all regarding race in South Bend. One is a federal civil rights case that has been brought by the family of a black man who was shot by a South Bend cop just, I don't know, months ago. Supposedly the guy had a knife. And it's getting to be clear that that's probably not the case. But the family is bringing a case that is arguing there has been an ongoing racial problem in South Bend in terms of the way the policing and in the way that just the accountability across the board. And that could shake up a lot of different things under Buttigieg. There was also it has become clear that, I don't want to get too deep into the story. You can listen to the Ring of Fire interview with John Larson. You can find it on our YouTube channel. But there was a black lieutenant, and the first chief of police that Buttigieg hired, the non-temporary one, came from, I think it was New Bedford, had not a particularly good record on race. The lieutenant, they were at a meeting together. The chief steps out. The lieutenant hears there's a problem outside, goes outside, confronts a guy with a gun or a weapon. I'm not 100% sure exactly. I can't remember. But the story was that the lieutenant felt like the chief, when he came back in, did not come and back him up. Well, the Buttigieg administration tried to keep it under wraps, but the chief pursued it, sought investigations. Ultimately, it goes to the Indiana State Police. They do an investigation. Buttigieg says, I've seen the investigation. It basically says completely exonerates the chief from any wrongdoing. I mean, it wasn't a criminal investigation. It was just sort of like a behavioral one. Turns out Larson gets a hold of the report, and it does not say anything of what it says. The opposite of what Buttigieg says it was.
Buttigieg campaign officials are saying that a problem in South Bend is that African Americans don't like to be discriminated against because Buttigieg is gay.
That is not. But folks should check out that interview. Buttigieg has a lot of problems, both in terms of like electoral problems. I think that like a weird history of being very, very happy to go along with. I'm not saying that Buttigieg is racist. I think that Buttigieg just is not someone who is willing to stick up for anything that in any ways does not show him the path to the least resistance of his success.
That's a McKinsey spirit.
I believe he doesn't think that
that's actually the motto, right?
But you could still do some pretty racist things.
Hey, speaking of racist, this is a fun story. A former Breitbart editor, what's her name again? McHugh. Katie McHugh. She would coordinate with our own Stephen Miller, and by our own, I mean one of the top advisors to the President of the United States. Oh, yeah. And,
we don't want this one.
A member of the tribe. Although, there's always some of those who are outliers. Apparently, he directed TPS policy. This is the TPS is the temporary
protected status
for people who are here because there was a natural disaster in their country or there was a civil war, and then they come here, they can't go back, their houses have been destroyed, or they can't go back because their life is being threatened, and they start to build lives here, and obviously they don't get a special favors, but they get to live here and they build lives. And, you have people here 10, 12 years. They have to, like Haitian earthquake is an example. I mean, there's plenty of examples. And Stephen Miller had a real problem with this because those people are not coming from countries that are predominantly white. And so, well, listen to what Katie McHugh said. Apparently, not only do we know that Stephen Miller is a white supremacist, but this former Breitbart editor who said that she sort of like fell into racism this way and got sort of like radicalized to white supremacy. So the Stephen Miller directed this policy via the white supremacist website VDare. Check this out.
And just before Miller heads off to work for the Trump campaign in 2016, he touts what he saw as the danger of allowing hurricane victims from Mexico to come to the U.S. They will all get TPS. That's temporary protection status. That needs to be the weekend's big story. TPS is everything, he says, and sends McHugh an article on the dangers of TPS from a prominent white nationalist website. Did he want you to parrot a white nationalist website?
Yes, he did. It was understood that Miller had editorial control over the political section of Breitbart News.
Well after Miller joined Trump's inner circle, the U.S. ended TPS status for several countries.
That's, that nexus, and Miller at that time was working for Sessions, right?
Yes.
Then it starts to become clear how, what this web of people, how these people show up there. It is basically because Miller's working for Bannon, and Miller also is working for Sessions. And Sessions is the first person in the Senate to endorse Donald Trump. And all these guys, they're all working on this project of making America whiter again.
And all of that Breitbart coverage about Mexico is, that is the whole sort of progenitor in some ways of what Trump was able to do. They had been some of the most
It's probably where he got the idea too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's synchronized, and he's the nexus point. He's the still, even with this administration as it is, he still hasn't been fired. Just on you're talking about everybody leaves just because it's, full of crazy, insane, toxic people. He's still there.
I'm convinced he's the one who wrote that letter, the impeachment letter. That's what people are reporting. Meanwhile, it's not just that white supremacy in the White House. Sometimes you want to look outside of the White House to get some more advice on your white supremacy if you're Donald Trump. And who is this? Is this what's his face? Tom Homan. He is the former acting ICE director whose job now it seems to be to go around and remind people how dangerous non-white people are. That seems to be his job. Does he have any other job? So here is Laura Ingraham complaining. Now, here's the reason why. Well, here, let her speak, and I'll explain this.
Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters are saying on Capitol Hill all day long, yesterday, all last week, nobody is above the law, Tom Homan. Nobody is above the law.
Well, according to Nancy Pelosi and, and Chuck Schumer and the rest of them, illegal aliens are above the law. When the president announced, almost a year ago, we're going to do a nationwide operation for family groups who've had their final hearing.
They freaked out. Can't do it.
They freaked out because they're above the law, even when the federal judge ordered them removed from this country based on laws enacted by Congress. Illegal aliens are above the law.
Well, Trump's supposed to be the toughest guy on illegal immigrants. And you see lines and lines of illegal immigrants in New York. So, you go on Facebook, it was like, where's ICE? Where's ICE? I line up and say, guys, you got to.
Like I said, we got to take a tougher stance. And I saw the acting secretary and Lou Dobbs the other night.
They're not afraid. They're not in the shadows.
He's taking this lightly. We cannot take this lightly. First of all, we don't even know who these people are. When they go to the DMV, they're going to show a Mexican matricula ID, which the FBI has done numerous reports saying they're the most vulnerable to fraud. So these people are presenting fraudulent foreign identification. We don't even know it's them. And this law in New York, it goes beyond just it doesn't allow them to share their information with ICE, only ICE. They specifically call out immigration, and only that, if ICE actually gets a court order to get the information, within 3 days you're supposed to notify the subject of the inquiry so they're going to let them know ICE is looking for it.
Right.
It's a direct violation of 8 U.S.C. 1373. It's a direct.
All right, yeah, Tom Homan, I'm sure will. I trust him to resolve the conflicts in the law. So the problem that they have, that Laura Ingraham has, they're complaining about laws that have been passed in New Jersey and New York that allow undocumented immigrants to get a license. And of course, he pivots from the FBI says these identifications from Mexico are the easiest to make fraudulent, and therefore they're all fraudulent. But the fact of the matter is that despite what Laura Ingraham wants them in the shadows, the reason why you don't want that is because undocumented immigrants are here. They take care of our children. They work at restaurants. In addition to, they work on farms, whatnot. They are within our society. And you do not want a significant portion of our society, really any portion of our society, afraid to alert people that, hey, there's a fire over there. Or, hey, I saw a crime being committed. Or, hey, there's a danger over here. And when you get that, it endangers society when they are too afraid to report things. And that's basically it. If you keep them out of,
report things like labor violations.
Well, they're not going to report labor violations in these instances, and that's the point. You want to keep them, if you're Laura Ingraham, from reporting labor violations, which is exactly why we need to provide a quick path to citizenship, so that these people cannot be exploited. But
it's also good to license people who are driving cars, not to sound like a big government liberal or anything.
Exactly.
Easy now.
Daryl Perry's gonna have some words.
All of these people are driving. Laura Ingraham, presumably, when she gets into her car that by a driver from Fox News and drives home to wherever she drives to, she wants to make sure that the people on the road are at least competent enough to pass a driving test. Yeah. Exactly.
One would hope.
One would hope.
It's so scary to look at those people's pictures plastered on Fox News, because it's like putting a target on their backs. And I hope people will be careful in the future when tweeting photos of undocumented immigrants.
Yeah, they're very, very upset about the idea of immigrants getting licenses. Lastly, here is since we're on the question of immigration, here is, and this is nice. You always like to see this. A guy named Joe Gomez. Who is that? Is that the guy who took the video? Yeah. He's on a bus in Toledo, Ohio. You remember watching you watch old movies about the Nazis and they come on the bus and they show us your papers. They come on the train. Yeah, this is not a movie. This is the arrest of a man who's been here for 7 years. He's an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador. And earlier, he had helped translate for several women at a bus stop who didn't speak English, and apparently somebody tipped off, like, there's a Spanish speaker here. And here is video of ICE boarding this bus in Ohio and arresting this guy who's been here for 7 years. Watch this.
You're under arrest. You're illegal. Give me your phone. No, I need your phone. You're done. Go with your bag. Put your phone in your bag, okay? What's in your pockets? Put it in your bag. What else is in your pocket? Anything in your pockets? No? What's that? No, you can't. No, you're not allowed to smoke. I'll let you take a couple puffs in the car. Okay?
I feel safer already. That guy. Now, here's the thing. As far as I know, I may be wrong about this, but the last time I checked, Greyhound does not have to allow an ICE cop to come on their bus. They have no warrant. They don't have to allow they don't have to allow ICE to do that. That could be company policy.
Are they unionized? Do we know, Greyhound?
I have no idea.
Because that is the kind of thing that a union could stand up for.
I don't know.
And should.
But should, without a doubt. Messed up. But Greyhound has a choice to make. I mean, this is, again, another situation where we could protest again. Now, this is a recent protest. Okay.
October.
Yeah. And so in October, there were protests against Greyhound. I'm surprised I don't see more on social media about this, but I think to a certain extent, maybe they feel like, I don't know, maybe they feel like their customer base is not on social media, but I'm surprised that we don't see sort of like the same type of pressure on Greyhound that we see on, other groups that are advertising on Fox or something like that.
I feel like most people who use Greyhound don't have a whole lot of choice in the matter.
Well, my point is, yes, I don't. The only time I take a bus, let's say to Worcester, is just because there's no train. And I try and avoid doing that. I haven't done that in years, with all due respect. Although I think the bus is a little bit better, but Greyhound should be doing better.
I took a bus to Philly, but it wasn't a Greyhound, so I'm glad I didn't.
I take the bus when I'm broke and I can't afford the train.
All right, lastly, we got one more clip, right? Is that it? Yeah, let's do this one. So, Tory Health Minister Matt Hancock, he's the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. They have been consistently understaffing the NHS. This is the English, essentially, agency that runs healthcare, not healthcare insurance, that provides government paid for, the doctors are paid by the government, the hospitals are owned by the government, and they have been understaffing and cutting back on this. My guess is, 1, probably to save on taxes, 2, to get people fed up with it so that it becomes privatized. Certainly there have been documents and conversations about privatizing it. And here is Matt Hancock using a double speak, I think, is probably the best way to describe this. Here he is.
Every year at the moment, around 27,000 nurses around leave the NHS. I want to reduce that number. Even if we didn't have any new nurses, just by reducing the number who leave, you would end up with more nurses in the NHS. That contributes, that retention of existing nurses contributes to increasing the number of nurses in the NHS, and that's very important. Also, we're going to have new nurses, and the combination of increasing retention, which means fewer nurses leaving, and having more new nurses, including with our bursary today. So if you're watching and you want to become a nurse and you don't think at the moment you've got the financial resources to do it, we are putting in place that extra support on top of all the existing support.
There you go. It's like it's like a clip from the British Office. If you take $5 away from me instead of $10, it's like I have more money.
It's like the one louder Spinal Tap.
Right, exactly. We're going to turn this one up to 11. This one has an extra unit.
We're just going to take the 99% and put them in the 1%.
It'll be interesting to see how much the promises by the Tories to increase social spending on things like this actually come to fruition. Because here, we had the worry with Trump might do infrastructure week, or
right,
that might actually capitalize on, putting money in people's hands. And I don't know. We'll see.
Not quite. Also got to wonder why 27,000, how they're going to slow retention. In other words, like, is it they're going to raise pay? We're going to push the age in which you get your pension later. Therefore, you won't leave. Stay longer.
Older nurses.
We're going to have a complete force of nurses all in their 80s. But you'll get much more experience. Therefore, better nursing. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 512 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Howdy, is this me?
It is you.
This is Skylar from Austin. How are you doing, Sam?
Good. Skylar, what's on your mind?
Well, I have one of two questions. Either one that's strictly for Michael Brooks or one that's for everyone in the office.
Michael has left the building. He put in his 45 minutes for the day and then skedaddled.
Well, that sounds like Michael. My question is, have y'all kept up on the Mesut Ozil story with the Uyghurs?
No.
So Mesut Ozil is a soccer player for a London-based club called Arsenal, and he came out on social media probably Friday or Thursday of last week, basically talking about how the human rights violations are affecting a Muslim minority group in China.
Right.
And immediately his London-based club walked away from that statement, and they were like, do not put us in the same thing. Basically what the Rockets did with Maury. And China has gone as far as to take that player out of whatever video games are being produced and sent to China. Is there any way that we can do some sort of BDS on China, or is China just so damn powerful at this point we just accept whatever they say?
I mean, there was a time where like the U.S. government would actually say, hey, we're not going to ease restrictions on people doing business in China until you do a better job in your human rights. I don't know. I mean,
this government is trying to figure out how we can copy them in that area.
Yeah, I mean, but we're talking about literally over 1 million people put in, in re-education camps.
It's very sad for the NBA that if it takes off in China, it'll be over that, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I hope the Uyghur sacrifice is worth it to, play some basketball games there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's messed up.
It's messed up. It's bad.
Yeah, and it's not counter-revolutionary to point that out, tankies.
Well, it's also, it shows that corporations are there not for freedom, but they're to discipline the workforce. Because, like, there's plenty of people who might want to speak out about this China thing, but for the NBA, but they've completely, like, locked that up because there's way too much money in the NBA on the line for this. And
Yep. There's too many people who are, I think, afraid of losing money. I mean, that's basically it. Appreciate the call, Skylar.
Thank you.
Did we ever talk about that TikTok that the girl did about the eyelashes? Calling from a 972 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
This is Nathan from Israel.
Nathan from Israel. We're getting a very international crew of people today. India, Israel.
Yeah.
What's going on, Nathan?
We like to report about oppression and fascism all over the world. You know how it is.
Yes, wonderful.
So, speaking of, okay, so I have two quick things. First thing is relating to Israel. It's about, so I don't know if you heard it in America, but back when Trump moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, our very normal and, normally functioning government decided to name an area in the Golan Heights to be Trump Heights, which is, again, just what you do, courtesy. Anyways, a very weird thing that happened as a result of it, the Golan Heights is like historically pretty underdeveloped area. It doesn't have much like urban development because it just takes a lot of money and there wasn't a lot of investment. Also, our government sucks. Suddenly, there's a lot of money being poured into Trump Heights. So that's pretty weird and pretty strange, and also followed by government subsidies. The really weird thing, and it's kind of hard to parse this out because I'm not a reporter and I only know this by like reporting I look around at on the internet. It seems like with all this new money flowing into Trump Heights, the Trump foundations or like some of the Trump family are getting a cut, which is probably the most like severe case of emoluments you could think of. This is like, you know, the whole Saudi thing where they stay at the hotel. Imagine if instead of doing that, they named one of their hotel in their capital, like Sunduk Donald Trump, and then they just decided to start giving the profits from that hotel to the Trump foundations. It's really astonishing, and it's not being reported on at all. And again, it's very difficult to look into that because, you know, I'm young and a soldier and don't have any way to confirm this stuff.
Are there any and there's no reporters on the ground, and there's no reporters in Israel who are looking into it?
I tried to message someone on Facebook, but I don't know if this goes anywhere, and I don't want to stir up too much trouble because I'm in the IDF, and you know, you're not supposed to do that sort of thing. I thought it was worth mentioning, and if there's any Israeli listeners on like hearing this and may have something like any knowledge of this stuff, who may live in the area and are able to look into it, I'd love that. And yeah, I just thought it was like worth talking about this.
Is there anything? Have you seen anything written about it? If you want to send us a couple of like links to stuff that is sort of like peripheral to that, or you know,
it's on Hebrew, and I don't know if you like
my Hebrew lo midaber ivrit. That's the only thing I can tell you.
I have links from like wow.com, which is like the biggest online like news aggregator in the country, but I'll try to find it, like the one that I saw, and translate them if I find the time.
That'd be really helpful.
So I have a second point very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, can I bring it up? So, you know, we've been following the presidential race and like other lefty friends of mine, and this is assuming like the ideal situation in which Sanders does win the nomination, and he's trying to like change the makeup of the courts to be like more progressive and generally like better for progressive causes. Have you ever considered the idea of him nominating Elizabeth Warren for the Supreme Court? She's a very successful law professor, and he's arguably better on stuff like antitrust and and obviously bankruptcy law, which is like her forte. I think she'd be great in it, and you know, it's hard to imagine even the establishment Democrats like opposing such a decision, since they love her and she's a great fundraiser for them.
Well,
I just thought it was an interesting notion.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea. I mean, I think it's a little premature to say that, but I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that if Bernie Sanders became president, that whatever job Elizabeth Warren wanted, he would be open to it. And,
yeah,
but I imagine
that's what I was thinking.
Look, there's probably a lot of people who might be equally suited for the Supreme Court. And frankly, you might want somebody in their 40s as opposed to late 60s or 70s. But, you know, Secretary of Treasury. I mean, there's a whole host of things that I think.
I just thought of the one like where she would be able to exact the most like compel the most, like the biggest amount of change.
It's an interesting idea.
Things take a lot of effort and multiple people.
We'd have a second Warren court.
Indeed. I appreciate the call. Appreciate the call. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye. We're getting a call on our other line. I don't know what that was. I just had to take them out. We're good. Folks, you can IM the show via our app. I've set up, I've turned on the IM. Here we go. Dr. Eric Fromm. I'm friends with a pretty prominent Israeli journalist. I'll see what I can do. Oh, good. From New Jersey. Great. It'll be an interesting story. Attorney Andrew, the proper synthesis between Sam and Jamie's position on the courts is that the left needs to start talking about judges as super legislatures because that is their function. We need to abandon entirely the notion of a reasoned jurist. Their function is and always have been an ideological rubber stamp. When we fetishize their knowledge and wisdom to any degree, we turn people off. We give them reason to think judges deserve their heightened status. They don't, and people need to know that. That is not, that has always been my contention. I think I'm interested in that, but I have had that contention. It got me in trouble in my first year at law school 25 years ago.
I think it's
Tell us more.
It's going to be hard to get that message across to people until it starts to become an impediment for things they can actually expect.
Yes, and the sad thing is, then you're like,
it's too late.
Too late, because the first time around, I think when people realize that, well, first time around, I mean, that's what happened. I mean, FDR realized it at that time. There were things like, hey, we're going to reinstitute your pensions. And then some of the judges were like, oh, okay, well, it's time for me to go.
He threatened to pack the court as well.
Yeah, he did. And there is like academic research that suggests that the real change that helped loosen things up a little bit was actually reinstating pensions, which had been taken away by the Republicans at some level to maintain people on the court. But you did see the court was, if you go back and you look at the court following Reconstruction, you see a very similar pattern of them shutting down voting rights and then basically trying to strip the government of its power. The whole non-delegation thing that we're, I think, about to see in maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 years, which is going to inhibit the ability of a Democratic president to have their agencies do stuff like make sure we have clean water, make sure we have clean food, make sure that banks aren't able to get away with, all of that is under threat. And we had non-delegation was sort of the law of the land, as it were, for about, I think, literally under a year in the, I think it was the early 20s. When that book comes out, somebody tell me about how that court was like our court. I think somebody's got to be writing that right now. Rick,
in a way, it's good that it's mask off time for people to realize the court is ideological and always has been, but it's bad that it's happening because we have so many reactionary judges.
And what's really bad about it is they're young. So it's like we can come to that awareness now, but then we got to wait 30 years. Rick from Florida, not to be the progressive voice here, but did any of you guys see Pacman's video a few weeks ago where he talked about how Medicare for All is an unrealistic goal for the left? In fairness, he did say that he supports it himself. But to me, the messaging here from a guy with significant following like Pacman, it's not politically realistic, does nothing but undermine progressive candidates. I agree. Particular Bernie Sanders. And that's disappointing to see from a left-wing host who's generally good on most issues, not pertaining to foreign policy. A lot of things the left wants could be deemed unrealistic in the current political environment. But taking a defeatist attitude that is seeking compromise seems to be a tactical mistake and hurts the left long term. Look, the bottom line is, if the Democrats don't win the Senate, and the odds are still that they will not, everything is unrealistic. Everything. And I will say this. If we just start with that baseline, that everything is unrealistic, my argument for Bernie Sanders in his support for Medicare for All would be the one thing he can do is to make sure that he puts a judge on the court to replace Breyer and Ginsburg, who would undoubtedly probably be the most likely candidates to be replaced, with someone who wholeheartedly believes that Medicare for All is not unconstitutional. So that it should be a goal that, your goal is exactly that. It is where you want to head to. You cannot say that this is my goal, but the left should not pursue it. You can say, like, look, it shouldn't necessarily be a purity test for the election. Okay. Because you think it is unlikely to happen either way, and therefore it is a purity test that is sort of wasted. But I also think that like the bottom line is like the political salience. We have just seen Medicare for All get bashed by Democrats. And at one point, if the nominee supports Medicare for All, guess what happens? Democrats stop bashing that. If they want to maintain their status as Democrats. And that's going to change the dynamic greatly. I mean, look, the Affordable Care Act was underwater in terms of approval throughout the entire time, up until the Republicans tried to take it out. You don't necessarily need to, building a wall had a net unapproval rating. Guess what? He still won. In fact, you could argue it was because of the wall, despite the fact, because here's the thing, and this is also the same dynamic that we've talked about with gun control. It's not just approval that is relevant. It is the depth of feeling of the unapproval or approval that makes an even bigger difference. Because I will take 4 people where Medicare for All is their top issue. I will take those 4 people over the 6 for whom Medicare for All, their unapproval, but Medicare for All is like 4th on their level of what they care about. Did I articulate that so that people can understand? You give me a smaller group of people for whom a specific issue is the end all be all, and they are more powerful than a group that is larger for whom their disapproval or approval of whatever issue it is secondary or tertiary or fourtiary, whatever that word is. That's just the reality of politics. That's why we have no sensible gun control in this country. In addition to the fact that the Supreme Court is a bar to it in many respects. It's because despite the fact that 80% of the country is in favor of more vigorous gun control, it's just not at the top of their list. And so, I think to the extent that, if anything, if I had a narrative, it would be the attacks on Warren's proposal. Like, I think it is a net loss for supporters of Medicare for All that Warren, regardless of who you support, and I support Bernie Sanders. I actually believe that he's going to win. But I think it was a mistake to, from a tactical standpoint of the left, if you support Medicare for All, to force her to show her financing. Like, we have now lost what I thought was a very valuable rhetorical tool, it seems to me, at least for the short term. Maybe it can be revived. That the question about Medicare for All is less to do about taxation and more to do about cost. And I think for supporters of Medicare for All, frankly, that's the idea, right? I mean, many people, their support of Bernie Sanders is a function of their perception of his dedication to Medicare for All relative to Warren's. But then presumably, if that's your formula, Medicare for All is an extremely important agenda item for you. And the idea is, like, how do you tactically work both the electoral goal that you have in terms of a specific person, but also how do you promote the adoption of that policy? And sometimes these things are at odds with each other. And so for me, it was unfortunate. Like, I don't, it was unfortunate that she responded to the pressure to sort of show the financing plan. But B, I think it was unfortunate, and I don't think it was just coming from the left. I think it was she was getting attacked, on that roundly as much by the centrists, that we have lost that rhetorical tool. but hopefully he'll come back. Jim from Fresno. Sanders is the only one whose support is enthusiastic enough to compete well in the general because he will get the most campaign volunteers. I think that's an oversimplification, but I think more or less that's correct. I mean, my theory is this, that there is an enormous amount of people who are highly motivated to vote. And this is a good time to talk about this. Sanders appears to be, surging. And,
yeah, baby.
And I say appears because there has only been one poll taken in Iowa in the month of December. Now, I have a feeling there's a couple of reasons for this. One, and apparently Bill Scher tweeted out something which I think was explained, at least some of this tweet. In the last time in Iowa, 2007, when we had a non-incumbent election on the Democratic side, the Iowa caucus was in January, and in November of that year, right, which would be the equivalent distance from the caucus, there was something like 13 polls. And the equivalent of in 2018, there is one. I don't know what it was in 15, to be honest with you, 2015. But so we don't really know what's going on there. And there's a bunch of reasons why that's the case. The more expensive, I suspect also like December is a bad month to poll because people are just
frazzled.
Yeah. But I don't know what is going on. Somebody's calling me. We don't really know what's going on. Like the only poll that we have shows that Bernie Sanders is gaining almost in a tie with Biden, but there's a 5% margin of error. And so he's 1 point behind Biden. Buttigieg is about 4 or 5 points behind them. I mean, so you get a notion, and then Warren. The whole point of Bernie's campaign, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but the one of the foundational things about it is that they are going to out-organize, that they are organizing. And it's not just like sort of a typical, he's got a great ground game. I mean, and I will say this, who knows? That's all we heard about the Clinton campaign. They're going to out ground game them. Now, the ground game ended up being, we have the better algorithms and we're not even using people. But I would imagine, in fact, I know for a fact that when we talk about organizing, it is people with Sanders' campaign. It is people. And maybe they're really horrific at it. And maybe, but I'm just trying to come up with like the scenario how we could overestimate the strength of it.
And not just for the election either. It's a movement that understands it needs to go beyond the election.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at in terms of like the ground game, like that it is running parallel to a political campaign. And so we'll see in Iowa. But if it is the case that these polling are starting to show this, and theoretically part of what Sanders is doing is that some of their support is subterranean. In other words, it shouldn't show up in the polling because the whole theory of the campaign is we're going to pull in, not 50% of our votes are going to come from the margins, maybe not even 20% or 15%, but we're going to pull in an extra 5% of people who've been sitting on the sidelines. Maybe even 3%, 2%. I mean, if you were to pull in an extra 0.1% of the electorate, you win in 2016. You're talking 230 million people, and the election was lost because of 75,000 votes, more or less. But I have a theory that is completely based in nothing but just conjecture on my part. That when you look at Joe Biden's support, when you look at Joe Biden's black support, let's say, in South Carolina, that these are high propensity voters. That the support for Joe Biden comes from people who are going to vote no matter what. And they're going to come out and they're going to vote against Donald Trump. And that is why their vote translates into, I support Joe Biden because I am under the impression that Joe Biden is the candidate who can beat Donald Trump. And my number one issue is beating Donald Trump. And if it's not Joe Biden, I'm going to choose Joe Biden in the primary, or I think I will right now anyways. But if it's not Joe Biden in August of 2020, then I'm going to vote for that person. I'm going to vote for a soup can if there's a D next to them. I suspect that Bernie Sanders, who has the second greatest appeal to black voters, has the greatest appeal to voters of color, broadly speaking, but I think that just came out in the latest poll by a slight margin, that there is a higher percentage of low propensity voters amongst that support. And so, in other words, you're going to have all the people who are going to vote against Trump. They're going to show up on election day, but there is a small margin of people who otherwise might not vote, who are intending to vote. And really, at the end of the day, that's what this is about. I think that's what the Sanders campaign is about. But if you want to beat Donald Trump, that's what it's all about. How do you bring out the voters who are not already going to show up?
Turn out.
Yeah. And then the question is, how do you maintain that power? Barack Obama had that power. He had the apparatus. He had motivated the people. But in the end, he was only using it for an electoral purpose, so much so that he basically killed the movement that he had built because he didn't want it competing with him outside the White House. This is all well reported. It was reported in real time. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew everybody thought that they want, like during the summer after he was nominated, word went out, do not donate money to any outside groups. We want all the donations come in here. We will take care of them. People thought, oh, they're control freaks. Fine. They're building, Obama for America is going to be huge. And that's going to live outside. And that's going to be his muscle. That's going to be his street muscle. And then instead what they did is we need to starve that street muscle so that it loses a lot of its muscle and it becomes just flab so that it cannot push us and dictate to us what we're going to do on the inside. Sanders' campaign is built literally on the complete opposite theory of change. So much so that it's like the movement is running parallel to the campaign, or it's integrated into the campaign, but as much for after the campaign as it is for the electoral purposes short term. So we'll see. We'll see. Wow. That's the thing. Iowa is going to mean everything.
Those are some really disparaging remarks about Obama.
That's correct.
Well, I've seen word that Obama's waiting to see if Bernie pulls ahead and he's going to come out and be in the anti-Bernie coalition. So he might kneecap Bernie if he pulls ahead. We'll see what that... I assume he would prefer not to have to do that.
What's that?
To kneecap Bernie if Bernie starts pulling away.
Who?
Obama. There's a report going around. That
you think he would prefer to not?
He'd prefer that Bernie doesn't pull ahead because.
Oh yeah, that would say the other thing I want to talk about. Yeah, this is being regurgitated in a story about Bernie surging, but former President Obama has reportedly told those close to him that he'd speak out against Sanders if he continues to build momentum. Some believe that other party leaders would join a concerted anyone but Bernie effort to block him from winning the nomination if it comes to that. The bottom line is, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's as far as Obama would go. If we see it, we're going to see it in January. We're going to see it, sometime like in, March in the run up to Super Tuesday. There is a plan out there. I don't know what it is, and I don't know who has it. But somebody's saying if he achieves X, then by this date, then we're going to have to do something. And then it's going to be all hands on deck because it will be interesting to see how far they will go. And I don't know who they are. Maybe it's Obama, or maybe it's just people who are invoking Obama's name because they think it's effective. I suspect that Obama would not want Bernie. I think, my sense is they haven't been thinking about it that much.
Well, he said that he would. He'd intervene if Bernie seems like he's running away with it.
Well, he hasn't said that publicly.
Oh, right. But like it was reported by
no, I just read it.
Yeah.
I just literally read it. But I don't know if that's people who are invoking Obama's name or if Obama would actually do that. I mean, there's a difference. I say to you, like, Jamie, you can tell your friends that if anybody, has Digby on the show, that I'm going to blacklist them. That's different from them actually having Digby on the show and me actually blacklisting them. It's, we could see that, in other words, the reports that Obama would do something could be just all that Obama's going to do. We don't know.
Try to do it with reports now, so you don't have to own it.
Yeah, that counts as doing something.
It definitely does,
Obama
because
is absolutely in control.
Well, of course,
he could speak against it anytime he wanted to.
Of course, he could come out and say, like, I've seen the articles. That's not true. I'm not going to do that.
I guess saying that he would, in and of itself, constitutes an act.
That could be like, it also could be like, Biden goes and like, come on, man, endorse me. And Obama would say, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just say if Bernie wins, then I'll have a problem with him. How's that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to endorse you because I need to save my credibility for the anyone but Bernie campaign.
I mean, who knows?
It's incredibly short-sighted of them.
Well, this is all conjecture. I mean, so we don't know.
Sure.
I mean, we don't know what they'll do. And like, having Obama put out a release like that, it's signaling to a different crew of people. I mean, so it's a different thing. I would
not be surprised.
I wouldn't be shocked either. Although what I'm curious about is how far they'll go.
Yeah, we have to.
I mean, that's the point. It's like, how far will they go? Will they? Because here's the bottom line. No one wants to own Donald Trump winning because of them. So even though I see Bloomberg and I firmly believe he is buying an option to run, he's not going to exercise that option unless it's really, really clear, or, unless he's convinced that it's like a 55% chance minimum. Because the last thing you want to do is go down in history as the guy who was responsible for Donald Trump getting a second term. And
I feel like billionaires don't give a crap.
Oh my God. Are
Obama
you kidding?
will.
What? I mean, what? Of course they do.
Obama would care, but Bloomberg
is
too evil to care.
Oh, I think that's absolutely wrong. I think that's absolutely wrong. In fact, it's even more so. Like Bloomberg, that's all Bloomberg's doing right now. He doesn't need anything else. If he just cared about his money, he would just stay at home. He wants to be in. He wants he wants what kings want. I want to be known by history. And it wasn't enough for him to go down as mayor of New York. He wants to be president. And it's an ego thing that I think that mere mortals like ourselves cannot understand. But there's a double-edged sword there. I mean, why would Donald Trump care that he's impeached? Why would Donald Trump care that he's impeached? There's no material difference whatsoever to him for being impeached, yet it's driving him crazy because he knows for the rest of eternity, hopefully it's a long time, for the rest of eternity, he's going to go down as a disgraced president. And it's not like, Bill Clinton, definitely a stain on his record, but he still had 60% approval rating when they were doing it. This is Donald Trump's approval rating is not going to be 60% while the impeachment happens, unless something dramatically changes in the next 5 hours. Unless, we've got footage of Donald Trump running into a burning house to save a bunch of children and puppies. That's not happening. So the best weapon that we will have, and I'm not convinced that Bloomberg isn't buying an option if Warren is the nominee either. I don't know. I know that, there's a sense that they would love to have Warren. I don't know.
I mean, there are a number of prominent Democrats whose names escape me currently who've said that they would not necessarily support Sanders against Trump.
Oh yeah,
Manchin's the most.
Oh yeah,
but I think you have to go into it like we can't be too anxious about these sorts of possibilities. Like if Bernie wins it, then he has to do what Trump did, which is like everyone's gonna come in line.
Yep.
Like it's time to come to daddy.
Yep. And the other leverage point that we have is the interesting thing about this is because it's about history, right? For someone like Bloomberg, like to enter in as a third party, and because it's about legacy for Barack Obama. The first draft of history is journalism, and we are living in an era where we have more ability to our butterfly wings in this one sector in particular is more powerful because people tend to believe that what's happening on Twitter is sort of a narrative. And the point is like, this is all perception, right? Like it's possible 5 years from now or 2 years from now, some political scientist could do the numbers, crunch the numbers and find that like, yeah, in fact, Michael Bloomberg did make it possible or in fact, but it's like the Comey letter. Like, they will look back on the Comey letter and say the Comey letter is what did it. Because that was the narrative that was formed. Maybe it did or maybe it didn't. I would argue that there's a dozen other reasons that are equally but-fors in terms of Clinton. But the Comey one just is the one that people coalesced around, at least who write history or provide the first draft of history. And so the ability to make Michael Bloomberg think in that scenario that we're talking about, that people perceive him as being responsible if Trump wins, has actual power. It's one of the few sort of like rare, I think, instances where something like that, where perception becomes reality.
He will totally find a way to wriggle out of it, though. There will be a number of factors if Trump wins again.
Yes, of course.
I do still feel like there is a segment of the ruling class that maybe says that they dislike Trump, but would still prefer Trump to Bernie.
I agree.
The entire ruling class, I think.
Yeah.
Winnipeg Craig. Sam, are you aware of the shenanigans going on the MR Twitter account? I am not. There's a newly posted photo of you meant to make you look like a senior citizen. It's a complete betrayal considering how young you actually look for a boomer. Thank you, I think. I'm going to go take a look at that now. Let's see what we got here. What is it? Oh, that picture? I've seen that around. Oh, wow. It's weird, right? You look like Henry Kissinger. No, I don't. No, I don't. All right, take that down.
Sorry.
Somebody sent that to my uncle, and it looks very much like my uncle. It's pretty crazy. Math fanatic. There was never a year zero, Matt. We went from 1 BC to 1 AD. That's why every decade, century, and millennium starts with a year ending in 1. And it ends with a year ending in 0. This decade ends on December 31st, 2020.
I don't know, guys.
It's not that
What do you mean?
serious.
What do you mean? Mathematic fanatic just told you.
I don't trust math.
Well, and he's wrong also. We didn't actually, as we just established, it was retroactive. So we didn't go from -0 to 1.
The point is, even retroactively, we went to -1 to 1. There's 1 BC, and then there's year 1.
So there is no near zero.
There is no year 0.
There's
no like, it's 0. It's January 5th, 0.
Well,
Nobody ever said that.
Not until,
even retroactively. There's no date like that retroactively. It is January 5th in the first year of the Common Era.
Well, maybe after the revolution, we'll have a new system for our years.
Boom.
France tried that.
There you go. Colin from Nebraska was knocking doors in Iowa this past Sunday. Talked with a Biden voter about 50 or 60 years of age. He's a Biden guy because of experience. Says he's to despite saying he's going senile. But he loves Bernie and Bloomberg. Bizarre. Says Bernie's consistent and fiery. Only on policy didn't like Bernie's is the education plan. A common theme among these older voters I talk to, but 2 months is more than time to convince these types of voters. Stay on Twitter for the Pete hate, but donate and make calls and knock on doors for Bernie Dog. Goth Cola. Is there any chance we get the bitch ass, hoe ass Rhodes libertarian guy to debate Sam? I'm open to it. Definitely. Jalaya, would you agree that Progressive Voices is the TMZ of bland progressive YouTube gossip? I mean, I think so.
That might be his bio.
No
Daddy
comment.
Foucault. Discipline and punish me, Sammy. Rube David. Do you think Clarence Thomas will announce his resignation the month before the 2020 election and then, depending on the election, either change his mind or let McConnell replace him in December? Well, I don't know if he can let McConnell replace him, but I don't know if they can move that fast, but maybe. Hillary's buy and ride. Hey, y'all, sitting here on my favorite seat, sipping my government-funded chocolate milk. Love the show, but Howard is better. Oh, Hillary's Sibian ride. Okay. Brock from VA. I think Michael was referring to Peter calling South Bend a user-friendly city in his ad video for the tech center. Matt from Mass. Hey, Matt, the Crucible and now the Middle Ages book. What are you going to do next? The Canterbury Tales? Paradise Lost? Actually, that would be a great one to do. Also, Matt, what's your opinion on gun germs and steel?
I haven't read Gun Germs and Steel, actually, but Paradise Lost would be great. Milton was supportive of the regicide, so...
I'm also a fan of the Canterbury Tales. I memorized the dirtiest passage in it, which I may recite someday as a bonus.
There you go. All right, this is the final IM of the day. Folks, I apologize. Final call of the day. Sorry, I don't have time to get to other calls, but we'll try and take a lot of calls on Friday. Calling from a 469 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
It's Mike calling from Richmond, California.
Mike from Richmond, California. What's on your mind?
Hey, one thing I've been thinking about is there's been a lot of discussion about this free college, free trade school situation.
Yeah.
Have you heard about the IRAP situation, the Industry Recognized Apprenticeship Program policy that the DOL pushed through?
No.
With Scalia?
No.
So what they're basically doing is they're dismantling all the standards for apprenticeship programs so that if you're in a skilled trade, specifically in the building trades, it doesn't have to go through like the process that would traditionally come from being in a union. I work in that skilled trade. I just finished my apprenticeship, actually. And one of the things that it seems pretty apparent they're trying to do is reduce the total overall standards so that non-union employers have a much easier time declaring like whatever program they want to be about an apprenticeship program, or set up some kind of trade school for a variety of different trades.
Right.
And I think that there hasn't been enough discussion of how that whole trade school conversation is kind of crap. I mean, largely I feel like the most successful programs, and I think most people who work in the trades would tell you, are, through actual apprenticeships that require you to like be working and be going to school at the same time for like 4 to 5 years.
Will you send me
a lot of
Will you send me at majorityreporters@gmail.com what you're talking about that change with the Labor Relations Board and the Scalia case?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thanks.
Majorityreporters@gmail?
Yep. Thanks very much. Okay. Appreciate the call, Mike. Bye. Stocking up on all my reading for the week off. All right, we'll do 5 IMs, then we're getting out of here, folks. Callers, again, apologies. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That's what we used to say back in the day.
That's what Semisonic used to say in closing time.
There you go. Is this me? The Intercepts podcast has Wendell Potter on to talk about McKinsey and Mayor Pete. Interesting. Really cool. The Israelis' caller's tip should go to Max Blumenthal. If he can't report on it, he'll know who to pass it on. That's a good idea. The Progressive Voices. Hey, Sam. there's been new developments from the Progressive Voices team regarding studio backgrounds. It turns out that Mr. Cedar got the idea from ROF's Ring of Fire, Farron Cousins. Do you have any comment? No comment!
Yeah, Farron did a tell-all with Progressive Voice.
Did he?
Yeah. Talked about arguments with Kyle Kalinske and Jimmy Dore as well, too. So some pretty spicy stuff there.
And wait, what did he say about the background?
I missed that part, sorry.
Well, it is the case, actually, that he had a show called Go Left back in the day. And Scott, who was the producer of Ring of Fire, I said, how did you do that? And he goes, we just built it. Now, they just built it. I did not just build it. I did a what do you call that? A hack on some, I'm not going to say from which Swedish furniture store I did a hack on, but. Guy from Denver. Sam, can you do a segment on Tabor, Taxpayer Bill of Rights? It has left Colorado unable to fund so much, and the citizens have now no way to help our schools. And I don't know the specifics about that, but there are bills like that from California where you need like 2/3 majority or anything. Anytime you raise taxes, a certain percentage has to go to a specific thing. Yeah, it's really problematic for states, any entities to lock themselves in like that. A Square, Sam, those 4 senators will vote against. Too many incentives to not even, if you lose. Check Tom Friedman this morning at 8:02, broken clock right one time. He noted, only thing now is mobilization, and Dems understanding it's all about getting power now. Sam's new friend from Vegas. Sammy, where are you at? Waiting here at Vegas with the 3 Bs, booze, blackjack, and broads. I'm waiting here to tell you how Social Security won't last much longer. Despite our deficits, you'll still always have that one B that I won't ever have, a fucking boomer. Oh, it's that dude who I interviewed. Okay. Thick Mulvaney, you guys should put the call number in the YouTube description. I see people asking for it in the chat. Right, because we want more than 40 people on hold. And it's on the screen. All else, if we don't take back the Senate, are we confident that Sanders will be able to replace Breyer and Ginsburg? I'm not sure Republican Senate will ever confirm a Democratic nominee to the Supreme Court anymore. I mean, look, that type of conflict would be good, but I can be sure of this. That if Sanders is the nominee, he's not the type of person who's going to say, like, well, we just need to appeal to the Republicans who have a old-timey sense of what is right. That's what I know is different. Congressional baseball fans, so it's looking like the new Disney Star Wars opening weekend is going to go very poorly. It had a 56% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes this morning. Disney's already taking a page out of the centrist Democratic playbook and blaming the fans for the director not having a ground game in Michigan and Wisconsin. Jar Jar Abrams will never admit his mistakes. And the final I am of the day, Schaefer. The gap between approval rating and winning is organizing in terms of disciplining centrist and right-wing Dems in the context of the fight for Medicare for all, Green New Deal, etc. Do you think there are mechanism strategies that work other than primary challenges? Yes, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that in the future. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah,